Ice Cube is not a Crip. He's not a Blood. He's not really a thug. He's an entertainer. And that's the dope. And you gotta get that bull out your head. Because what he talking about, he ain't living. And what I lived is what I'm talking about.
Ice Cube.
Ice Cube was a great kid, just a nice kid.
So Ice Cube wasn't gangbanging at all?
No.
Y'all listening out there? Hear the ice crumble.
I thought Ice Cube was the most gangster motherfucker on the planet.
You know what?
I thought Ice Cube come in here and everybody. You know what I mean?
He's a great actor.
When Ice Cube left NWA back in the day, it stirred up a lot of bad blood, especially with Eazy-E, who would take shots at Cube whenever he had the chance.
We're gonna Ice Cube.
Dead.
Yeah, was never from Compton.
Not around here, Bubba.
Now you're hollering at South Central.
On the surface, it looked like Eazy and the rest of the crew were just mad about Ice Cube's departure and saw him as a traitor to the group. But according to rumors, Eazy's disses went deeper. He didn't just want to call Cube a sellout, he wanted to reveal what he saw as Cube's fake gangster persona. In the song Real Motherfuckers, Eazy delivered lines aimed right at Cube, saying, "The fact that the bastard is simply just an actor who mastered the bang and the slang and the mental of N Compton, Watts, and South Central. Never ever once have you ran with the turf. But yet in every verse claim you use to do the dirt. But tell me who's a witness to your effing work."
The bastard is simply just an actor who mastered the bang and the slang and the mental.
So, was Eazy just taking jabs, or was he calling out Cube as someone who rapped about things he never really lived? Let's dig into the backstory. As most fans know already, Ice Cube left NWA in 1989 over money issues. He felt he wasn't being paid enough for all the writing he did on the Straight Outta Compton album, and that led to an ugly fallout. This beef got so intense that it even dragged in people who had nothing to do with their business. One notable example is Dee Barnes, a presenter on the Fox TV show Pump It Up, which covered hip-hop culture and often featured big-name rappers. Dee's name even came up years later in Eminem's song Guilty Conscience, where he referenced Dr. Dre's attack on her. But let's look at how Dee got caught in the middle. By the time the Ice Cube drama kicked off, Dee had already interviewed NWA several times. She was familiar with the whole crew and had covered them on her show for years.
Ice Cube of NWA will be hanging out with him and all his homies at his house.
We'll be back after these commercials or breaks or cuts or whatever.
Whatever. Don't go anywhere.
But once Cube left, things shifted. NWA responded by dissing him hard on their track 100 Miles and Runnin', making it clear they weren't just going to let him walk away quietly. According to Dee Barnes herself, when she got the group back on Pump It Up to talk about their latest moves, the energy was tense from the start. Every question she asked led to a jab at Ice Cube, and it got so heated that the production team had to edit out some of the harsher parts just to make the interview airable. But here's where things took a turn. When the episode finally aired, it included not only the NWA interview, but also another clip filmed earlier on the set of Boys in the Hood with Yo-Yo, who was Ice Cube's friend and collaborator. Unexpectedly, Ice Cube crashed the interview and took the opportunity to diss NWA, using their own lyrics to throw shade right back at them. To make matters worse, Cube even made fun of the Doc, who was close to Dr. Dre and had recently suffered a car accident that permanently damaged his voice.
Ice Cube won't pump it up. I got all suckers 100 miles and one. I'd like to give a shout out to the DLC. Y'all can...
For the record, even at the time, Dee Barnes said she didn't think they should air that segment, but as just a presenter, she didn't have the final say over the edit. Unfortunately, the final edit sensationalized the story by playing the two clips back to back. After Ice Cube's interview aired, Dee turned to the camera and mentioned that she's always in the middle of controversy.
It's the D, always in the middle of controversy right here on Pump It Up.
This was likely a reflexive response to an awkward situation, but in the edit, it looked like she was stoking the flames, encouraging the beef between Ice Cube and NWA, and positioning herself right in the middle of it. After the interview fiasco, some time went by, but Dr. Dre and Dee Barnes eventually crossed paths again. Given that they rolled in the same circles, it wasn't too surprising. Both were prominent figures in the music industry and had worked together on multiple occasions. However, this time their encounter was far from cordial. At a Def Jam Records party, a drunken Dr. Dre spotted Dee Barnes. Still furious about how the interview had been presented, he flew into a blind rage. According to Rolling Stone reporter Alan Light, in an article called Beating Up the Charts, Dre picked her up by her hair and began slamming her head and the right side of her body repeatedly against a brick wall near the stairway. his bodyguard held off the crowd with a gun, ensuring no one could intervene. Dre then tried to throw her down the stairs but failed. Undeterred, he began kicking her in the ribs and hands. Dee managed to escape and ran into the women's restroom, but Dre followed her, grabbed her from behind by the hair again, and proceeded to punch her in the back of the head.
So then Dre had dragged her around the corner into like this bathroom stall and started kicking and stumping and punching her.
They grabbed me by my hair and started slamming me up against the wall. It's a painful and traumatic experience.
This vicious attack didn't go unnoticed. Members of NWA openly discussed the incident in subsequent interviews. MC Ren bluntly stated she deserved it. B deserved it. Eazy-E echoed this sentiment, saying, "Yeah, B had it coming." Dr. Dre himself was unapologetic, saying, "People talk all this ish, but, you know, somebody F with me, I'm gonna F with them. I just did it, you know? Ain't nothing you can do now by talking about it. Besides, it ain't no big thing. I just threw her through a door." Dee Barnes tried to sue Dr. Dre for $22.75 million, but the case was settled out of court. This whole back and forth between NWA and Ice Cube really ramped up the tension, with Eazy-E especially keeping the flames of animosity alive. He went hard on Cube, calling him out left and right for what he saw as a fake gangster persona. And if anyone had the credentials to do it, it was Eazy. Unlike Cube, Eazy had real connections to the streets. He was affiliated with the Southside Crips and had ties to some notable figures, like Keef D, who was a known player in the Compton gang scene. In the 90s, Keef's family even had their own car shop on Long Beach Boulevard in Compton, known as Compton Hydraulics. This spot wasn't just a shop. It was a hangout for people in the neighborhood, including music producers and street figures, which was how Eazy and Keef D originally connected. Eazy grew up right in the thick of things, near the Southside Crips territory in the Kelly Park Compton Crip neighborhood. He was close with Keef D's brother Kevin, so it's no shock that when Eazy went to shoot the video for his diss track Real Mutha Effing G's in 1993, he had some Southside Crips presence in the mix. One car in that video, the Gangster of Love, supposedly belonged to either a Southside Crip known as Big Spank or one of Keef's family members.
This is the season to let the real motherfucking G's in.
Eazy wanted it to be clear that he wasn't just rapping about the streets. He was actually connected to the people living that life. Even the guys in the video backed up this image, with some of them repping Southside Crip symbols, wearing Seattle Mariners hats with the S on the front, which was a known Crip emblem, and flashing gang signs. Eazy himself rocked a blue Mariners hat with a yellow S, aligning himself with the Southside Crips color scheme and style.
Man with the turf, but yet in every verse claim you used to do the dirt. But tell me who's a witness?
Also featured on the track was rapper BG Knockout, who was reportedly tied to the Compton Nutty Block Crips and had a close friendship with Orlando Anderson, Keef's nephew, who would later become infamous for his alleged role in Tupac's Emder. Meanwhile, Ice Cube's street credibility didn't hold up in the same way. Rumor had it that Cube didn't really come from the kind of rough upbringing he often rapped about. According to his own biography, Cube grew up in a pretty solid middle-class neighborhood and went to some of LA's better schools far removed from gang life. So while he made a name for himself with songs full of street tales and gang references, a lot of people started questioning just how real Cube's lyrics were. Even some OGs from LA have called him out over the years, saying he was acting instead of living the life he rapped about.
Ice Cube is not a Crip. He's not a Blood. He's not really a thug. He's an entertainer. And that's the dope. And you gotta get that bullshit in your head. Because what he's talking about, he ain't living. And what I lived is what I'm talking about.
For some people in the streets, this was a huge slap in the face. They felt Cube was cashing in on a lifestyle that others had lived and died for, without any of the real stakes or struggles that came with it. To them, Cube's gangster image was a disrespectful, exaggerated act, one that didn't pay enough respect to the people who actually faced the risks and the consequences of street life every day. Most people today know O'Shea Jackson either as the confident rapper who pioneered a new sound or as the Hollywood actor who brought his tough persona to the big screen. But if you call him by his stage name Ice Cube, one thing that quickly comes to mind is his huge influence on the music industry, especially in shaping what's now known as gangsta rap. In fact, Ice Cube has often claimed he was the one who set the stage for this gritty, intense style of rap. He became the voice of NWA, giving the group its unmistakable edge with his hard-hitting, confrontational lyrics. However, there's a twist here. Ice Cube's lyrics may paint a picture of life on the streets, but if you dig a little deeper, it becomes clear that Cube's life didn't really line up with the harsh, gang-heavy lifestyle he often raps about.
Were you involved with gangs?
Well, kind of, because it was like, I knew all the gangbangers, but I didn't really go and put on the colors and was like trying to do dirt because I didn't see no money in it. You know, so I used to.
This isn't just hearsay. Even rappers like 50 Cent has pointed out that Cube's experiences don't match up with the gritty world he describes in his music. While Cube's rhymes bring vivid, intense tales of struggle and survival, in reality, he was involved in the music industry from a young age, building a successful career far removed from the gang life he raps about. Even now, Ice Cube hasn't changed much about his image. Take his 2010 album I Am the West. The cover shows him holding a gun, dressed in a classic Dickie suit and Chuck Taylors, a throwback to old-school gang attire. But by this point, Cube was in his 50s, living a comfortable life that didn't have much connection to the world he portrays. Some people argue that he's holding on to a character that no longer makes sense for him, especially given his status as a successful Hollywood actor and businessman. Then there's the criticism that Cube hasn't done enough to support the next generation of West Coast talent. While he often reminds everyone how he paved the way for hip-hop, many rising West Coast rappers like J-Rock and Glasses Malone feel that he hasn't used his influence to uplift artists who actually come from the backgrounds he raps about. Cube has even called out radio stations for not playing his newer music, saying it's unfair considering how much he contributed to the genre. But if he had chosen to help these younger rappers in their own struggles with the industry, maybe the West Coast airwaves would look very different today. For someone who claims to be a representative of West Coast rap, Cube's commitment to actually supporting the community has been questioned more than once. The disconnect between Cube's lyrics and his real life has only grown over the years. His commitment to this gangsta persona borders on a fairy tale, as he's consistently portrayed himself as a hardened street figure, even though he never really lived the lifestyle he describes in his songs.
Ice Cube.
Ice Cube was a great kid, just a nice kid.
So Ice Cube wasn't gangbanging at all?
No.
You hearing about all this gangbanging stuff from someone that doesn't gangbang at all?
Me up.
Yeah?
It who?
People are also saying that maybe Ice Cube's whole gangsta image goes back to his role as Doughboy in the 1991 film Boys in the Hood. It's like he dove so deep into that character that the persona stuck, shaping his identity in ways that still show today.
Oh, we got a problem here? We got a problem here?
Some even compare it to Tupac Shakur, who was rumored to have adopted a thug persona after playing Bishop in Juice. Just as Tupac's street credibility is debated to this day, fans can't help but notice that Cube's portrayal of himself as a hardened gangsta seems more like fiction than reality. The comparisons get sharper when you put Cube next to someone like J-Rock, who's known for his genuine street reputation. Interestingly, at the Paid Dues Festival, it was Ice Cube himself who decided J-Rock wouldn't perform on the same stage. The festival's organizer, Murs, even confirmed that this was Cube's call. With Jay out of the way, Cube felt comfortable enough to mention him on stage, but you can't help but wonder if he would have been so bold with J-Rock standing right next to him. After all, Cube's background doesn't exactly match the persona he's built. Growing up in a stable, two-parent household and even attending college, Cube isn't the hardened figure he plays in his music. Yet he's stuck with that gangsta image for years, like he's holding on to a younger version of himself. And unfortunately, by sticking to this character, Cube seems to have blocked artists like J-Rock, who represent the very reality Cube's lyrics are only about. This contrast between Ice Cube and Eazy-E is even clearer when you look at certain scenes from the movie Straight Outta Compton. In one scene, Suge Knight is shown beating up Eazy-E to force him into signing over Dr. Dre's contract to Death Row Records.
Mouth.
But according to people like BG Knockout and Keef D, that never actually happened.
Easy getting beat up by Suge and his people.
You don't want that problem.
Well, I
wouldn't want that problem.
Eazy had the backing of the Southside Crips, and it's highly unlikely that Suge even tried to lay hands on him.
I watched that movie and stuff like that. I don't think it's true because Eazy-E had the whole Alondra behind him.
This adds another layer to Eazy's credibility. He was really about that life, which made his callouts to Cube more valid. Today, when Ice Cube claims to represent the West Coast, it doesn't carry the same weight, especially with some new voices and even certain street groups in LA distancing themselves from him. What's even more frustrating to some is that many young West Coast artists look up to Cube, hoping he'll use his influence to open doors for them. But unless you're one of Cube's own kids, it seems like that's not going to happen.
Get a pimp, she couldn't make it on her own. She had to get a pimp, she couldn't make it on her own.
His sons, OMG and Doughboy, are basically the only ones who get to share the spotlight with him. And what do they rap about when they join him on stage? Unfortunately, it's much of the same misogynistic and violent themes that have marked Cube's career since the late 80s. Doughboy, for instance, raps lines like, "I keep a bad B with a fat derriere, and you know that H fresher than a new pair." OMG and Cube chime in on similar notes, even with hooks like, "She had to get a PIMP, she couldn't make it on her own." It does make you wonder about Cube's views on women, especially since he's been married for decades and even dedicated a song, Nothing Like LA, to his wife, whom he's credited with being by his side since 1989. She might feel a certain way knowing that her husband has brought their sons into the same controversial legacy he's created, as if it's something to be proud of. But in today's music scene, it's fair to say that Cube's sons, OMG and Doughboy, aren't really making much noise. Despite having Ice Cube as their father, a certified legend in the industry, they haven't managed to put out anything groundbreaking, and that kind of says a lot about whether talent or connections actually matter on their own. Even with their dad's massive influence, they're not exactly taking the music world by storm. Now, when Cube isn't rapping about bees, another favorite theme of his is violence and death. It's something you can see across almost all his album covers over the years, loaded with death symbols, dark imagery, and that single eye that's so often linked to things like Freemasonry or even the Illuminati. Cube's album artwork is packed with references to death and an all-seeing eye symbolism that's not exactly subtle. Take the K at Will EP, for example, where he's basically handing a gun to the listener, making it pretty clear what kind of vibe he's going for.
Cause I'm down in a suit and tie. They the homie that I went to school with.
Then there's Death Certificate, which features Uncle Sam lying on a table, covered in a sheet. It's hard to miss the message he's sending there. On the P. Dador cover, there's a skull on his pipe, and his album art has this ongoing theme of dark imagery: guns, smoking, skulls, and needles. From Straight Outta Compton all the way to I Am the West, Cube has leaned heavily into themes like these, almost making it his brand. His music is so full of topics like racism, misogyny, emder, and profanity that it's clear he's deliberately choosing to keep things dark and edgy. Over the years, he's dropped songs that target all kinds of groups: Koreans, white people, Christians, Jews, and even his own community. And through all of it, he's never apologized, never softened his stance, and honestly, still seems to hold on to a lot of that hostility. It's interesting to see how many people still see him as a symbol of black empowerment despite these intense, sometimes divisive lyrics. But if we're being real, it's a big stretch to think Cube's harsh words actually align with any genuine philosophy of black power. For all his hard talk, his Hollywood career and presence in the music industry seem to say the opposite. Ironically, the very people he's insulted in his songs, Jewish producers, white co-stars, and even fellow African Americans, are the same people working with him, hiring him, and helping build his career. Some people think it's not just that Cube is putting on a gangsta act, but that he's also putting on a revolutionary act too. For all the fans who cheer when he takes shots at the system, it's hard not to see the irony. Cube's out here taking shots at the man and positioning himself as some kind of anti-establishment figure, but it looks more like he's playing the game. By now, he's practically part of the system he claims to be against.